Hey, this is Writers Row. I've got a special guest on this episode. I will let him introduce himself.
Hello, I am author William F. Aicher. So thank you for having me on the show because I love talking about writing.
There you go. And if you like the content I've been putting out on this channel, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and hit that bell if you really want to. So I brought William on this episode to talk about writers being readers. So the writing community is out there. There's the hashtag, there's groups of friends, there's pockets. I won't go so far as to say there are cliques. That was a whole thing like a month or two ago, depending on when this airs, where people were talking about writer cliques and stuff like that. But getting back to the point, writers are readers. And so I brought William on to really talk about how do you approach reading other authors. So, you're a writer, you meet somebody on Twitter, their book looks great. How do you approach reading their stuff and then ultimately maybe evaluating it and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's kind of two different versions of that. One is like reading something for that person. There's reading it for yourself. And generally, I'm kind of at the spot where I read for myself. If I see something that's out there and it's interesting, I'll buy it. A lot of times I don't even tell people that I bought it because I don't want them to know, and because I've got stacks and stacks and stacks of books, so like chances of me ever getting to it, who knows when it'll ever happen. So, um, but yeah, as far as like approaching it in general, that's really it. I just look for, if I see a book that looks interesting, I get the book and I read it. That's it. That's it. It does. I don't look at like indie or self-published or trad or whatever. It's like I want to read good books because that's my kind. Who wants to read a bad book?
Right, exactly. And so you find a book from, let's say, an independent author, and you do pick it up and you do get around to reading it. What do you do with that? Like, how far do you take it? Are you going to leave a review? Are you going to provide feedback to the author? What do you do with that once you have actually read a book from, say, an indie author?
So if it's an author who wants me to do like like an endorsement quote or something like that they're looking for, there I will definitely talk and give them feedback if it's an issue with it, that I think things that could be improved, or I'm going to talk to them a little bit more like a beta reader on it, because I want to make sure if I'm putting my name on this, that I want them to have a quality thing. Also, it's like I'm happy to help people out too. It's like if they want me to read through stuff, I've got plenty of people that I do critiques for, or beta reads or whatever. But beyond that, I don't really tell people a lot of times when I'm reading it. Sometimes if it's someone who's a friend of mine or someone that I know and I already know that I like their books, I'll let them, hey, I ordered the new one or whatever. But if it's like somebody who I have no relationship with, I tend to keep it quiet because I don't know what it's going to be like, and the last thing that I want to do is like, I've had issues in the past where people have gotten really mad at me for saying negative things about their books. And I get it, like people don't, some people want criticism, some people don't, and for me, like my kind of general rule is if I read a book and it's awesome, I'm going to tell everybody about it. I mean, like I'm going to write reviews and I'll post videos and tell about it on Twitter and be like, this book's awesome, Instagram it and everything. But if it's not, I just usually I finish them. I mean, there's some books that I don't finish, but I don't DNF that many books.
Yeah.
But I just don't bother with the reviews unless it's like, it's like, I don't know, like, let's say Michael Crichton or something like that. It's like, if I read a book of his and I didn't like it, I wouldn't feel bad about leaving a review. I mean, I'm not gonna change his world. It's like, not to say that I have that much, clout or sway out there, but when there's 10,000, 100,000 reviews sitting there, my one little review is going to make a difference. When there's like 5 or 10, they matter, and so I just, really look at it as kind of just, elevating the cream.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Do you have examples when you said, you'd said something negative about someone else's book and that upset them? Does anything come to mind with that, or was that just sort of like a feeling you had?
No, I can't remember the name of the book. But there was this one thing a couple years ago where I wrote a review of this guy's book, and actually I really liked it. And it was totally kind of like my review was like, this is what indie publishing is for, because it was like, there's no way some mainstream, traditional publisher is going to publish this thing because it's
Hmm.
not that kind of story. It's like this is not going to make a ton of money. This is indie gritty stuff. But he just got mad and like tearing, dragging me through the mud and all sort of stuff. And it was just like, man, I just need to deal with this. And so, kind of that became like my rule in the background is like, if someone thinks that I'm gonna like that it's negative, I'm not even gonna mess with it. But then beyond that, it's just like, you know, again, there's not any major issues there, but I just, again, I don't want to drag someone through the mud on it. If someone wants to talk to me about their book or whatever, I'm happy to, but like,
Right.
like that's not my place. Like, I think if I was just a pure reader, maybe, but also, as an author, like there's relationships and all of that stuff. I'm not gonna lie. I don't create, it's not, politicking and all that to like build relationships, but also like I I'm not going to negatively impact something either because, you know, the other stuff might be great. They might be a great person, whatever. It's like, I don't want to start, like the last thing I want to do is say, hey, DC, your book sucks,
Right.
and like that's not a good way for us to get to know each other, you know?
Yeah, with indie people, like I did a whole video on this. If I remember, I'll link it somewhere. But knowing that, like, reading a book is more than just the story, it's more than just their use of grammar and writing rules. It's how it makes you feel in the end. And I think understanding where the author's coming from, even like knowing them as a person, sort of stacks the deck in their favor to some extent for me. Like I read my friends' books and they make when I'm like, I can't believe they put this together. I know the effort and the sacrifice and the things that they had to do. They have a day job, maybe they got a family, they've got all this, and they were able to put together a book. I give them a boost. Like I don't go from a 1 star to a 5 star, but I might do 4 to 5 or 3 to 4. But at a certain point, you're right. Like, I don't want to go from a 1 to a 3 even, because something that's a 1 or a 2, clearly there's some work that needs to be done. Maybe it needs an editor, or maybe it needed, like some content editing that would really draw the story and the characters, make them more cohesive or whatever it might be. And, unless they say something to me along the lines of, hey, I know you read that, please leave me a review regardless of what you need to say. Unless they say something like that, I tend to agree with you. 1 or 2, I'm probably just going to move on. I might write, if there's a site where I can write a review but not leave like a star rating, like I might do that. And, like one of the things, just to give you a quick example, I had someone reach out to me to do an ARC review, which I'd never done an ARC review. This was last month. And I was super excited. So I went above and beyond. The person that asked, it was actually Cheryl Lawson. She writes
Oh yeah,
some
I know
space
Cheryl.
operas and different things. So this is her first book in the Journey to Vega series, A Dark Genesis. But she just came out with Erebus, I think is the way you pronounce the new one. And I was like super stoked. And I'm not a big space sci-fi guy. I'm more, hard speculative sci-fi. But I'm like, these are novellas. I dove in. This one was cool. This was 5 stars. The new one was 5 stars. But when I got approached by her, I was prepared. I'm like, I'm gonna go in. Let me do this because a friend is asking me. I'm generally interested, and I was super excited. I was super rewarded from it because it's a genre I don't read. It was super accessible, super quick to get in and out, and I was happy to do it. And it's an honest 5 star review. I put the whole disclaimer. I got an ARC copy of this, but I'm leaving this, at my own discretion, my own liberty. And it worked out well. And I think that's probably best case scenario when someone reaches out and wants to give you an ARC or wants a beta read or something like that and somebody likes it. But I guess, have you ever had an opportunity to meet someone who gave you a bad review?
No,
You
I know I
haven't?
haven't.
Okay.
I've gotten plenty of bad reviews, but I haven't ever met him. It's a
So in the span of about 3 months, I got a 3-star review from a guy who wrote like 5 paragraphs about how terrible my book was, and it was still 3 stars. I was so confused about it. Like, part of me wishes I could contact that person and be like, "Why did I get 3 stars? You clearly didn't like the book. Like, why wasn't it 1 or 2? What was the redeeming quality?" And then I got a 4-star review where on somebody's website, like a blog, they like compared my book to another book with a similar style of writing, this interleaved narrative where you go back and forth from perspectives. And they talked my book up about how good it was. And so in the span of like 3 months, I get these like competing reviews, and I think that just kind of lends itself to being indie published, to just being a person who writes.
I would say don't look for writers to review your book.
Okay.
Look for writers to maybe give you feedback during, see if you can find somebody who can be a critique partner or beta reader, things like that who can help you improve. Instead, look for readers. And that reader might be a writer. They might not be. You read my book, but I did, that's not as, like I didn't even, approach you to read it. But
Right.
like if I were, it'd be like, hey, this is the kind of book that I think you like reading based on what I've seen. I think you might like this one, and that's really I think what matters is like think of them as the reader versus the writer. Yes, they're going to bring their writer hat into it because that's the way we think and stuff like that. We're
Right.
always still looking at these things because once you become a writer, you can't ever stop thinking in that way. But yeah, I'd say just look at, reach out to them like a reader. I mean, see what books they like, and if they like it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with just reaching out to people too and like saying, hey, I want to check this book out. I think you might enjoy it. Like some people shy away from that, and they're like, oh, I don't want to be spammy or whatever. But like, really, who cares? Like really, don't be a jerk about it. But
Yep.
like to say, hey, I think you might like this. That's being polite in my view. It's like, hey, I'm thinking of you. I saw this, and I think that you might enjoy it. You don't need to read it. It's fine. But if you take a look, and that's what I would say, really.
Well, I think you bring up a good point because there's the business side of being an independent author, especially on the independent side. You're always thinking business. How can I sell books? How can I get more reviews? Things like that. But then there's just the strict author side of it. How can I get more readers who like my stuff? And there's a Venn diagram, right? Like those two overlap big time, but there are separate sides of it. And so I like what you said. I think you might like this is a different approach to, hey, can you give me a review, right? There's this like dynamic there that's focused on them, and it changes who you might think want to read your book. Like, yeah, I could pitch to my friend who writes romance, hey, can you read my book and give me a review? But that's not the right fit. And yeah, that might be a means to an end to getting more reviews if they agree and they do and they like it and they review it, but it's not going to ultimately, get you what you want, which is a loyal readership, people that look to you as the sci-fi person. I mean, it might, like, you might convert a writer in a different genre to like what you write, but in
Yeah.
general, I agree with what you're saying. It makes a lot of
Well,
sense.
and I think that the thing that the way I look at it more is like, I think that the writer community. So think of like the social world. So you got the writer community who's out there, let's just say on Twitter, okay? And they're connected with each other, but they're also connected with readers,
Mhm.
ideally. Like they've got their readers who follow them and they got their writer friends who follow them. It's kind of the two main groups. And the way I look at it is what probably the thing you can do the most as an author within that community is understand that people who read your stuff are all different, and and you can elevate too. I mean, like, so you could say, hey, like, maybe you don't write the review, maybe you read the book, but like, if I see some good reviews being shared by somebody, I'll reshare it. Like, hey, check it
Mhm.
out. This is getting some. So that's the other thing I think is important to look at. There is like maybe they're not the right person to review it or read it or whatever, but like you still should share. You still,
Of course.
like, and people can, we all have influence, to as many people as see our tweets, and so I think that that's important. Excuse me, to kind of keep in mind there too, is that we can help each other out, even if it's not our thing. Like I've got a friend, Tracy Krimmer, who I went to school with her, from like second, maybe kindergarten. I don't know. Like I've known her forever. She writes kind of romance, not erotic romance, but more like the cute, meet cutes and stuff like that kind of stuff.
Sure.
She called it chick lit with a punch or whatever. She reads some of my stuff, but not everything because she's not a horror reader, but
Yeah.
she's read some of my stuff and she enjoys it. She'll share it. I'll share her stuff out because I know I've got friends on Twitter who are into that book too. Like, but I've gotten to the point where I trust and I know her writing is good,
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't review it. I would in no way feel that I was qualified to review it because I have no idea what to expect within that genre because it's not my genre. It's not what I
Right.
read regularly. But I also can understand what good writing is, and I can also understand what other people's reviews are. So I can still lift it. I can still, help people out.
Absolutely. And I think that's the whole purpose of writing community is to, build that community side of it and, help where we can. If we do want to read something and want to leave a review, great. If someone doesn't want to leave a review, that's their prerogative. And if you're going to leave bad reviews for people, I think you should be empowered. They're honest. People should be able to leave bad reviews. But if you're in a social circle, not necessarily repercussions, but like you said in the beginning, it can lead to awkwardness. It can lead to miscommunications of what people are trying to communicate.
Well, and I mean, the other thing, just to be frank, like any community that exists in the world, there are assholes, and there's going to be some out there who are just going to be jerks to be jerks, and that's who they are, and I think trying to be aware of that too is important. That like, some people might just, they just want to, they like tearing you down, and that's it, I don't want to be that, and I think it's best not to. But I also think it's best not, I also think you don't want to lie. You don't want to be, you don't owe, I don't owe anything to anybody. Nobody in the writing community owes anything to anybody.
Yep.
But we also can still help each other. We just need to be, I think, being aware of that we can help each other, wherever it makes sense. Like just treat each other as, like colleagues. And I think that's what matters. If you love a book, tell everybody about it. If you think somebody else might like this book but you didn't like it, tell them. If you didn't like the book, well, and somebody might, tell those people. If you just didn't like the book in general, like if you want to write a better review, go ahead. But like, I just don't bother. I really don't want to anymore because it's like, also, I got more important things to do in my time than to sit around writing a bad review. Like,
Right.
Like I already I already wasted my time reading the book. I don't need to spend more time writing about the book. So,
Right. And honestly, I find it fairly easy to write a good review, give a quick little synopsis, talk about what was great about it, talk about, what really sticks with you about a story. Trying to circle back and think about what was not good, it just doesn't feel quite as good. And someone in the writing community, I know who this person is, maybe we've chatted a few times, like, you know, tearing them and their art down just doesn't feel right to me. And so I'm less likely to give a 1 or 2 star rating, like you said, especially if it's, if they've got 500 ratings. Okay, they're starting to move books. They're getting a lot of reviews. Maybe it's not a big impact, and maybe that actually gives a discerning potential reader a little bit extra to think about. And they say the optimal rating is something like 4.5, because if it's only 5-star ratings, people are it's suspect to people. If it's lower than 4, people think it's not good quality work. So like something like 4.5 is like the sweet spot.
Yeah, and I know that if you hit it, just out of personal experience, if you're at 4.2, it doesn't give you that extra half star on Amazon. And I've been stuck at 4.2 on one of my reviews, and I'm like, I just wanted to look like 4.5 stars. It's like, I know it's not there. Like, just 1 or 2 people will come out and give me a review. The thing that really drives me nuts is to ramble on it. So like they got this thing where you can like write reviews or just rate books,
Right.
but they, on Amazon now, like, so you can just rate it with stars, which is nice, but like they don't weight them the same. So like people who like write their review, like it seems like they at least it doesn't seem like it weights the same because I see my other ratings come in, but it doesn't see the shift it go up. It's like, but if I see like a negative or a 1-star review comes in and someone's like, this book sucks, and all of a sudden like my overall ranking goes down. It's like, man, like,
Yeah, we could probably spend a whole
yeah.
episode talking about the algorithm for stars and reviews on Amazon. But appreciate you talking with me, William, coming back on the show. Always a good time to talk with you. Any parting words before we wrap it up?
Yeah, man, read good books. And when you find a good one, tell everybody about it. That's like, oh man, like there's nothing like finding a good book and telling other people about it, and they get it, and then they get to, and if it hits them the same way, to like have them sharing that joy, that's a big deal. So like, try to focus on that stuff, man. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. Try to be a friend and a positive force.
Yeah, start sharing books, not just tweets and Facebook posts and things like that. Share those books. Really
Awesome.
appreciate it, William. Really appreciate anyone who's watched this long, and we will catch you all next time.
Thanks for having me.